What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Cole Wellness Podcast. I'm JP Cole.
And I'm Julie Cole.
This is episode 3 of our Build Your Best Life series.
That's right.
I want to thank you for tuning in again, if you are, obviously. The last 2 weeks have gone really well, and we kind of like the idea of starting out each week with a little moment of gratitude. And today we really want to focus on that we absolutely could not be here without a whole host of people, and we will kind of pick apart and get to some of those individually, but today is just some gratitude for our friends and family.
Definitely. We wouldn't be, and I think a lot of people say this, but we really wouldn't be where we are without that. And it really, like, this gratitude for our friends and family is a great segue to our topic today, because, we'll talk about our recap from last week, but one of the best ways to overcome what we're going to talk about today is just to have supportive people who give you real, honest, targeted feedback and who you can be safe with. So, and that's, we have the blessing of having some family and some really close friends that really are those people for us.
Yeah. And who continue to reach out, give us constructive stuff to work on.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And, so thank you. And
a lot of cheerleading, which is good, I have to say, I have to laugh because we have, we usually give our shout out at the end, but I was sharing this story with somebody yesterday that 2 weeks ago, or I guess 3 weeks ago, Scott was in here and we were brainstorming, and he just said, y'all need to start a podcast. And we're like, haha, whatever. He's like, how about Wednesday? And so 4 days later, we're here recording our first podcast. Yep. And so I think that there's so many people behind the scenes that are just, that really just kind of that are the pieces that help us just kind of get pushed over the edge.
Yeah.
For sure. And just do it.
So last week we talked about mental flexibility and emotional resilience.
Yeah, we've gotten a lot of feedback about that too.
That went really well. So what's this week about? So
this week we're talking about imposter syndrome. And I guess we'll just jump right into it, which is this idea. A lot of people talk about it in the context of, professionally, you feel like you're a fraud, or that it's chance, or, something like that got you where you are, not your skill or your professional development, that it's a matter of chance. For some people that can also mean things like that you don't feel like you fit. It could be that you're not good enough, but it's sometimes a lot more subtle than that. And I always sing the song, which of these is not like the other one? It's that feeling of you don't quite fit, and
I like the turd in a punch bowl metaphor.
I know. I was waiting for that one to come out. Yeah, I used that one too. Actually, I had a client yesterday who was like, I'm going to tell everybody that, that my therapist said, when you feel like a turd in a punch bowl. And I said, well, it's true.
That's what it feels like.
That's right. Yeah. It is. Traditionally, if you look at the research around imposter syndrome, of course I didn't note, but it's this concept that, it was this concept that really originally was theorized to happen to highly successful people, right? That they're highly successful, highly driven people are really racked by this concept of imposter syndrome, or feeling like they're a fake or a fraud. And we find that that's not necessarily, all the people who are, it's just this subtle interplay of the way we interact and walk through life, comparing ourselves to other people.
And that to some degree, everybody experiences it regardless.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, introducing at the very beginning of just coming out the gate and saying, this isn't really a syndrome. It's a part of the human experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and as I was putting together the blog this week, and I want to hit that we have a blog on our website, colewellness.com. We don't do a lot. Yeah, we don't promote it a lot, but it's there, and it kind of is the the basis of the content that we kind of go into here. What was that?
I was just going to say you have really good words.
Oh, we're going to stop
the
there.
Best words.
I just know him and his facial expressions, y'all. Sorry. So, one of the things I talked about was going on a trip,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so I have this women's group I travel with. A lot of us have been friends for many years, and we just have we gel really well. And if there's a group of people I can be my authentic self with, it's these ladies. And this past fall, we went out west and we did a trip there, and I started reflecting before we even left for the trip on how I was already, being crushed by the comparison syndrome, like this idea that I'm not going to be the same as them, and that I don't really fit with this group, and that they're going to secretly find out. And how do we, what does that do? And really really looking at that process of how it starts that cycle of, well, then I feel different. So then I socially, I may emotionally isolate myself. I may pull back and not be my full authentic self. But then also, how do I create physical isolation?
Yeah.
And then how do does that start the narrative that I start talking about what they're doing to justify my isolation? And then next thing I know, I've moved myself out of the group.
Yeah, I'm doing behaviors that actually create the thing that I'm fearing.
That's right. Yeah. So I talk about that whole process in the blog, and so to really kind of just outline that loop to start.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So you kind of defined imposter syndrome as the idea that somehow we are secretly not qualified, not good enough, not like others, different from, apart from.
And it could be real subtle things,
Yeah.
right? I can think that I'm really smart, but you're all beautiful, and that somehow that makes me, or the joke that, somebody might joke and say, I'm the short one, or I'm the fat one, or I'm the, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like those kinds of jokes, right?
Yeah.
That really kind of belay a way we feel different.
Yeah. And this ties into what we talked about last week as far as that narrative or that story that we tell ourselves that we have to practice emotional resilience and mental flexibility with.
Absolutely.
Because otherwise, if we get stuck, we will do the old behaviors that separate us from other people that actually create.
Yeah.
That's one of the, all spiritual principles, excuse me, seem to be backwards. And one of them is if you hold on to a fear, you will create that fear, kind of a thing.
No doubt.
And so...
Well, because it becomes the funnel through which your perception flows, and so you're only seeing things through the context of that limited perspective.
Yeah.
And so what was cool about the trip is that twofold. I didn't really get into this in the blog, but there was a couple of times I did go lay down in the bed and I was reading. And, some of it was like I do separate and differentiate when I'm on trips, because maybe I don't like to go into the art gallery, but I want to walk down here and, and look at jewelry. Or maybe it's that I don't feel like eating there, and I'm okay with walking over somewhere else and having a meal by myself because it's not where I want to eat. And that's not the socialized, that's me just owning myself and being okay with that. But there were a couple of times where maybe I didn't feel like I fit. There was conversation about something that didn't connect for me. And so I'd go lay down in the bedroom and read. And then, somebody would look around and realize I wasn't there. And then next thing I know, all five of us would be sitting in a, bed together, laughing and joking. It was this piece of everybody pulling you back in. That was pretty cool. And then when we got home, just threw it out there.
That's how you felt?
Yeah. We got on we have a Marco Polo video chat, and I just got on there and said, listen, this is my struggle. This is what I felt there, and this is what I've been struggling with since I've been home, and I just wanted to share it. And lo and behold, they all get on there and they're struggling with their own versions of it. So. Yeah.
It's funny when you start talking about this, everybody has their own experience with feeling apart from, and I actually wanted to kind of talk about the different roles in our lives that it can, like you alluded to earlier, a lot of times we think about it professionally as in imposter syndrome, but it also happens in our personal lives, our family lives. Another definition that I found is that the feeling that you haven't earned your success or your accolades, that you simply got lucky to be in the position that you're in, that you're a fraud, imposter, that you don't fit in around people who actually earned it and know what they're doing, right?
Right.
And so when does imposter syndrome happen for us? I mean, the 3 times that I kind of looked at was when we're trying new things.
Oh, yeah, which is totally relevant to what we're talking about here. When you're talking about building your best life and normalizing this as a part of that process. Yeah. And how does that come out? For some people, it's just walking across the threshold of the gym. some people won't
Yeah.
even walk into a space where they're going to intend to make themselves more healthy because they don't feel like they qualify to be there,
Yeah.
because they don't think they're healthy enough to be there.
That you have to have it together in order to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or embarrassment about not being able to use equipment, right?
I hear that all the time from
Uh-huh.
people. They want to do a session just to learn how to do the equipment
That's
because
right.
they're scared to go into a larger gym and feel like they don't know.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, and then, part of what we do sometimes with folks, I mean, I have people that work out at other gyms. They may come in for a session here or there, for accountability, for a week, once or twice a week. But I'll say, I'll meet you at your gym. I'll pay the daily rate and we'll walk through the equipment together. I need to be clear. I'm not going and personally training you at somebody else's gym, but it's me paying the rate and going in so that you're with somebody you feel safe with, and walking through the equipment that's there and saying, okay, this is how you use this equipment.
Yeah.
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 We got a lot of movement in the gym. So,
People all over the place. Okay. Another time is during common life roles and responsibilities.
parenting. Hello.
Parenting, family, marriage, school.
Yeah.
You name it. And we'll dive into that a little bit more.
Yeah.
But I think that
Yeah.
that's a real easy place for me to automatically assume that I'm supposed to know or earn, I'm supposed to already know how to do it, you know?
Yeah.
And a lot of times we don't. And when you talk to other people, you find out, well, they don't know how to do it either. As a matter of fact, none of us got a book on how to do these things.
Right. Well, and so interestingly, how that ties in with the mental inflexibility, or the mental flexibility, is that a lot of times what people then do is they fall back on, maybe they had one thing they did that worked really well for them, or they had, and so they fall back on that as the gospel.
Yeah.
And so, and so there's this real rigidity to this type of, like, this way of thinking about it, or this way of doing it, that people become so tied to that they are they're not able to move away, and then that comes out in judgment of other people, like
for
who
sure.
Who eat that way or work out that way or who do that therapy, or who I mean, God bless, who use whatever they need to use to help themselves get better.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
So, and then the final series of roles was that stuff that we're expected to have some level of mastery in. Like, I think about as a personal trainer, health coach, therapist, like, I don't know that I've ever met anyone 10 years, 20 years, 30 years into any practice that doesn't to some degree share that feeling at times of being less than, apart from, having not earned, where they're at. You had alluded to earlier, Yalom, who's a famous therapist.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
So I can remember in graduate school, I was taking a groups class, and Irvin Yalom is a psychotherapist who does a lot of traditional psychoanalytic group work, and one of the things he did is he's done written a ton about his experiences with all the mistakes he's made as a psychotherapist, so that psychotherapists understand that, like, therapists walk through, like, we have to learn from our mistakes.
That was so helpful to read him talk openly about judgments and stuff that goes on in
inappropriate
his head.
relationships, the boundaries that got crossed, all kinds of stuff. But in the beginning of one of his books, and honestly, I can't remember which one it is. It may be Love's Executioner or one of them. But I just remember reading, and he said that there are some common things that people, all people that he's done therapy with are kind of, that they struggle with. And one is that this concept of imposter syndrome, like that all people think that there's a version of themselves that's their real self, and then there's this self that they project to the world, and that they feel like if people find out the real them, that then they won't love them.
They won't,
or they won't be accepted,
or
or they won't, that they'll be rejected or isolated from society. And he said that experience, and I can remember reading that and going, oh, wow, that's totally normal, And then I remember having a conversation with my dad, who's like a giant of his industry at the time, and saying that, and he said, you see where I am, and I still feel like I'm faking it every day. And I was like, oh, okay.
That here's somebody that's had a high level of success in an area, and they even share that, and I'm still figuring it out as I go, kind of a thing. Like, oh man, that was a huge relief to hear that.
Yeah.
And
absolutely. Well, and it's this piece of my dad, like, and he would talk about this, and maybe we can bring him on sometime to talk about it, but he would talk about how, due to life circumstances, he didn't finish school. And so he got his GED, and then he's self-made. He's just, he's self-made. He picks up really easily on things, and he kind of built it himself. And so the part that always, kind of got his goat was like, am I not qualified to be here because I don't have the degrees, and I don't have this, and I don't have that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So I thought it'd be cool to kind of break down some different roles that we've had at times, and how
at this list.
Yeah. We don't necessarily have to go through all of them, but
right.
I can remember as early as being a young kid. I'm trying to think of when.
Our 9-year-old, or almost 9-year-old, goes through it.
Yeah. I can remember being in advanced classes, and that self-talk of, like, I'm in the same class as everybody else. I've done the same testing as everybody else, but feeling as though I didn't belong there. That everybody else was smarter, read faster, performed better.
Sure.
And that's really what drove a lot of I need high grades. I need as a way to build my own esteem in myself, to say, no, I do belong here.
Right. That's the metric by which you came to judge yourself.
Yeah.
And it's one that's reinforced. So that's part of the reason why high achievers, or people with high achieving personalities, that's generally, generally founded in younger years, where they are compared to their other, to others. And it's true for people who are gifted at athletics, or gifted at, there's this almost competition spirit that gets brought into it, because your performance is compared. And so the comparison piece is part of that. And so that I can definitely remember that being younger too.
Yeah.
And I don't, my thought process, I mean, we've walked through this. I mean, I just have a different thought process than a lot of people, and learning to, at 44 years old, still grappling with that in some ways, and making it, because I don't necessarily always fit in circumstances and think the same way as other people.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? And not differentiating myself as unique, just saying, like, I'm an ENFP, which is like 5% of the total population, right? So, I mean, it's just this piece of my specific personality set is just...
It's rare.
It's just
super rare.
But, it's that piece. And, the beauty of being aware of this, I mean, we can start talking about some of the benefits now, is that we see it in our own kids, and we get to really kind of try to normalize it and kind of mitigate some of those things, so our kids are not being crushed by those things.
Yeah.
So
there's a great graphic that I saw this week doing research, and we'll try to get it so that it's posted with the blog and the podcast, but it basically illustrates the feeling of imposter syndrome, which is like, I have in my mind this idea that what other people know is this big circle, and I have this very small circle within it. I have this limited experience, knowledge set, and that they have all of this other stuff. And what is really going on is that each person has their own about the same size circle of experience, and some of them overlap, and some we know some of the same things, have some of the same experiences, but at the end of the day, it's not this special or unique type thing. It's just different. And realizing that feeling, even as a kid, I was constantly comparing myself to those outlying parts. It didn't, when we would sit in class, I wouldn't notice how we were all the same in a lot of ways, but I would notice as soon as somebody was different or knew something that I didn't know, or that stood out and it felt threatening, and it was like, well, they must encompass everything about me and this other piece that I don't have access to.
Right.
And so it was a driving force, and in a lot of ways I performed really well.
There's the secret they all have that I don't have.
Exactly, yeah. And come to find out that's not necessarily true. So anyway, this graphic really helps me wrap my head around, like, what we're really trying to accomplish and understand with imposter syndrome is our own subset of who we are as a person, and coming to be okay with that, being mentally flexible,
Sure.
And not falling into old patterns of behavior because we feel threatened, but acknowledging it, accessing it, looking for opportunities to grow with it.
So difference between this
Mhm.
and this,
Yeah.
right? This and this, like I can't put anything in a closed hand, so
Mhm.
as long as I have that hand closed and I hold to that idea,
Yeah.
right?
Then I can't gain anything.
Then I can't
Yeah.
gain anything, but I open it.
Mhm.
It makes me, I know this is going to laugh, but anybody who's watching The Good Place, it's like Tahani
Oh,
with
yeah.
her sister
Yeah,
on
yeah,
The
yeah.
Good Place when she comes to the art thing, and then she's like sitting there and she's looking at her sister's art, and she recognizes that she's always felt like it was her parents and her sister pitted against her, and
Yeah.
secretly her sister's always felt the way she did,
Yeah.
and it's like that recognition of all the things we've been fighting against is really that, when
Mhm.
she acknowledged it, they were able
They were
to
able
embrace.
to connect. Yeah.
And connect, and it's that piece of
Well, we just watched that episode last night.
yeah,
But I think about how many times when people have been vulnerable enough to share with me how they felt,
yeah,
left out, not a part of, or less than, or unknowing. It's like, man, how good that feels, because most of the time I'm feeling the same exact way.
Yeah.
Well,
it's even in taking that to our roles as counselors and
Mhm.
therapists.
Yeah.
It's that piece of just having somebody, twofold. One, people just coming in and sitting down in your office and
Mhm.
being able to be their truthful selves.
Yeah.
And finding safety in that. But also, I think about an example. I had somebody got really agitated and they stood up and they're, pacing around the office. And my office isn't big. It's a pretty cozy little office. And me, just sitting there and going, something's not working. What's not working?
Yeah.
Instead of getting, taking the bait and rising to the fight,
Yeah.
what's not working here?
Mhm.
And I think that's that concept of curiosity,
Mhm.
you talked about that in the first podcast, curious, not critical, but that
Yeah.
concept of that.
Yeah.
So what are some other areas? We talked about work.
Well, I think that, especially in the realms that we tend to work in the physical health and fitness and in psychotherapy,
Yeah.
it's not possible to know and be proficient
In everything.
in everything. Like, I always think about how I almost feel sorry to an extent for medical doctors, how everybody just expects them to know about
Everything.
every illness, medication, and then we throw the book at them in judgment when they don't. And it's like, man, how could you possibly know everything about everything? Like,
Yeah.
there's so many different specialty areas, and how quick it is and easy it is when I see a trainer that knows a different training methodology.
Sure.
And it's like, well, I didn't know that. To feel less than, I should have known that. Or I love going to trainings, and I love being around therapists because we are lovers of acronyms.
Sure.
And the truth is, I know about 50% of them.
Yeah.
There's not a day that goes by that you don't throw out some acronym that you've had exposure to because of a workplace environment that you were in that I wasn't.
Yeah.
And I immediately am like, oh, I should know what blah 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 means.
Yep.
And immediately that imposter syndrome kicks in. Why don't you know that?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, how could you know that if you didn't work in this specific field doing that specific type thing?
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
Trying to get a water from somebody. I'm thirsty.
Hey.
Uh-oh, we get the intro.
Come get in here.
Say hey to Gabriel, everybody. Thank
Hey,
you.
Gabriel.
Thank you to Gabriel. Oh, he even opened it for you. Well, it's also
That
this
was a really good cameo. Good job, buddy. Yes.
So we also think about I think about how many people, I remember in the early days when you were working over at Body Tech with David and Becca and you talked to them. I mean, they kind of took you on almost in mentorship type roles, and you're like, I'm not qualified for this, and they're like, that's why we're doing this with you, right? Like, to help you
I'm supposed to know
learn.
that already.
That's
That's
right.
why I'm sharing it with you. Yeah.
Exactly. And how we've been able to do that with folks. We'll meet people and we'll say, like, I think that somebody who's really committed to their health and wellness, who's really inspirational, and, and they'll say, we'll say, we really think you should consider, looking at personal training. And they'll be like, what?
Yeah.
I'm not qualified for that.
There's no way.
There's no way. What are you talking about? And even thinking about, there's been times in my careers where I had giants that I looked up to who I approached for like mentorship or to help guide me through learning a piece of what they're doing. And they just like freeze up and they go, what do I have to give to you?
Yeah.
And I go, what do you mean?
What are you talking about?
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You've got 20 years experience in this area.
Yeah.
You've got a wealth of information to share, but we don't see it about ourselves.
Sure.
That's why it's so important to have supportive, encouraging, loving people around you that can pull that out and say,
pull out the magic.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
no, remember, that's why we're your friends. You know what I mean?
That's
like,
right.
You know.
Right.
So speaking of which, the next thing is friendships.
Mm-hmm.
I skipped over relationships. But
He skipped over dating and sex.
yeah, I didn't write that. I wrote that. But no, just that imposter syndrome in friendship circles, you know, with we laugh and talk about FOMO, that fear of missing out, but how often, like, you know, how quickly it can set in. I work with clients all the time, or have this experience all the time, where somebody posts something on social media and immediately there's that train wreck of a cognitive thought process of
It's almost like flooding.
Of, you know, less than, they must be doing better, I'm not really like them, you know.
Or
and
somebody posts a picture and we're like, why wasn't I invited?
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
like,
I hear about that all the time.
yeah. Well,
The more introverted I get, I'm like, cool, good for them.
I know. I laugh because with my clients, a lot of times we just jokingly call it fake book because I really want to orient it to what it is. It's this alternate universe. It's like where we present the best of ourselves and so much, such a.
All of us.
Right. Every single one of us, right? You see our...
Dude, I'm not getting on there and being like, just had a fight with my wife and lost. You know what I mean? Like,
well, I laugh because we think about our vacations. Like, people see our camping trips and all kinds of stuff, and they're like, wow. Like, and I go, what they don't see is, like, us yelling at the kids 20 times to get back in bed, or, or the fear that we have if the kids get lost in the woods for a little while, or, if the lapses in that judgment, like giving kids lanterns and then walking over to the other campsite and the parents going, where are the kids? I'm like, I'm counting the lanterns in the woods. And they're like, seriously?
Seriously? That's how you're doing this thing? Yeah.
But, and I think it's really...
So parenting, yeah.
We'll segue.
That's on the list.
That parenting is definitely on the list. But I think this is really important because I think this is like when we talk about, you used the term, the first warning light in the first podcast. And for a lot of times, the first warning light for people that they're engaged in this self-fulfilling loop with imposter syndrome is this concept that they see a situation, they feel less than, or feel apart from, or feel like it's even too much, for a situation or a person. And then they start that narrative and then they fold in on themselves, they isolate. And what happens is FOMO, fear of missing out, comes along, and then they jump into a situation where they may be making a compromise. And so it's also, a lot of people play to the lowest common denominator. That's not saying that, but it's, they may make compromises and reach out to social situations or friendships that aren't the optimal, like they're not optimal for them. They don't, they don't hold the same values, or they don't have the same kind of, they don't do the same kind of things people love. And so those do two things. They just reinforce that even more. And then it also isolates them from actually, walking through the discomfort that comes from recognizing that about yourself. And so the warning light is that recognition that, why am I, like I have these friends over here. Why am I over here with this new friend? Or why do I always have a new best friend? Or why, you know what I mean? So it's that piece of, and I see it so much. I mean, I see it so much. Yeah. So, and I've walked through it so much myself. We do that in personal relationships, like romantic relationships too. Yeah.
Yeah. Looking back through my own personal history, definitely know the not having a good idea of my true worth or value or where I was honestly at definitely led to me surrounding myself and accepting people's behaviors, or surrounding myself with people that I wasn't necessarily happy with. There was always another group or a different person or something that I would rather have been with, but I would settle.
Sure.
And a lot of that had to do with my own stuff. It had nothing to do, I wanted to point the finger elsewhere and be like, how come all my friends are getting arrested?
Right.
And it was really that, I wasn't willing to have the confidence to do something different and be around different people. And, yeah.
Well,
So,
which is another point, because you're also externalizing to the other. Like sometimes you're externalizing to the other group and say, pointing out pieces of them. So you're angry or resentful about something that you perceive that they did that has you isolated, but you're not taking responsibility or seeing where you played a role in that.
Yeah.
And so that's and so a lot of times what happens is people lock down because it's so uncomfortable to walk through that acknowledgement process. The ahas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the next one you want to look at?
So we go into marriage?
Yeah. So in marriage, I wrote down like this imposter syndrome of being a provider, like as a guy, that's definitely one that I've struggled with, is this idea that, man, and it's not even necessarily about money. It's juggling all the things that a family might need: the attention, the emotional security, the financial security, and feeling
and
this feeling that other people know how to do it, are doing it better.
Yeah.
And constantly battling with that. Man, if I knew or had that I hadn't earned where I'm at right now,
right,
that it's fake,
right,
that
yeah. I'm not laughing at you. I mean, laughing at
Yeah.
I understand.
Yeah. And so that's a common thing. I work with men all the time in therapy around that exact thing, where it's like, I have some semblance of success in marriage and business and finances and parenting and all this, and I feel like I just stumbled across it.
Yeah.
It's not that I actually put in the work.
Sure.
And it's hard for us to wrap our heads around. Like, very rare is it that we stumble upon something or get lucky. It's normally as the result of effort and work and
trust and faith and
and the help of other people. But
it's like whole wellness. There was a time where like, is this thing a fluke?
Yeah.
I mean, is this? And it's like, no. Like, you can't continue to build on something that's that's and that's another piece about really just being honest when you see the warning lights come up. Is that you can't build a firm foundation on something that's not solid.
Yeah.
So there's two pieces to that. One is that you have to have a firm foundation. So acknowledging it gives you the opportunity to continue to start to get out of the quicksand.
Yeah.
Right. But then there's the other piece of it, is that like, it's really, you can't build something on in an unstable foundation. So if you can continue to build on it, then there's a lot of truth.
There's got to be some rock there.
That's right. Well, and even with marriage, it's this concept that, and I think this is true with all things, but this idea that it's always better over there. That thief is comparison. I mean, comparison is a thief of joy, right? And as Melody would say, fear is the thief of peace. And it's this piece of like, when you give attention to those things, it steals your joy, it steals your peace, it steals your happiness, and it tells you that there's something better over there. So that's another version of FOMO that we get into when we feel imposter syndrome. Like, so I'm not doing it good enough here. If it looked like that, if we did that over there, then it would look like that. And so the other piece is we create insecurity because we're constantly jumping around. And we talked beforehand about the importance of consistency.
Yeah.
And we'll talk more about that next week.
Every aspect of life.
Oh, yeah.
That is the name of the game.
And we'll dig into consistency a little bit in the next 2 weeks as we talk about, get back to those kind of steps and build your own life.
Yeah.
I mean, build your best life. But also this... I have people sometimes say, are really, and like, this isn't putting us on a pedestal, by the way. I just, I have people say, like, I really wish that I could communicate with my partner like you do with JP. And I go,
that's fine. No, you don't.
There's the behind the scenes. Where we work that out in a really awkward way. But like, we make this commitment to show up and do it anyway. And I think that that's the piece, is that, to be seen, you have to make the commitment to show up and be seen. I mean, am I right?
You are right.
So,
Did I get it right?
Yeah, you did. So,
I got it right.
and I think that that's true in all of these things.
Yeah.
That's true in all of these things. It's just that we wanna be seen, so we have to actually show up and be seen.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we can't
Well, it's that-
retreat into our narratives and stay hidden behind the
Yeah.
armor that they create for us and be seen.
Mm-hmm.
Like we have to make the commitment to like open the hand up, to lay down the the fight.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
Well, and something that you said, this might be a little bit off topic, but just triggered the idea of like that things are never as they seem. That you're constantly realizing that I'm always comparing my insides to other people's outsides.
Absolutely.
You know, like I can't tell you how many times I've spoken or done something new and people say, man, that was really good. You look, and meanwhile, like I am right now, my hands are clammy, I'm nervous, I'm
laughing because the clammy hands, like that's
that's a thing. So, but the internal experience is always, so it's easy to look at people, whether that's in marriage or in our professional lives or in our health journey, and say, well, they must feel, because of what I see on the outside, it must look and feel like this, when really the internal story is totally different for them. And that I think one of the gifts of practicing honesty and surrounding yourself with people that you can be honest with is the fact that you get to take a look at what's behind the curtain for everybody isn't what we project on the outside.
We all have the please ignore the man behind the curtain.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And those pieces, I think part of what you and I have just made a conscious effort to do in our lives in general, like we did this individually, but we kind of amplify it collectively, is just be as authentic as we can and be honest. Like we're honest that we argue, we're honest that we don't always get it right, we're honest about these things, we're talking about all these things because we've learned that the value of being honest and transparent and authentic about it, not only to help other people, but like the role it plays in helping us stay sane, helping us stay connected, helping us do, all of these things.
Yeah. It takes practice.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh, you talk about parenting.
Yeah, I was joking with Darren earlier today about that experience that a lot of dads have that I had, which is that, you get home and the door closes and it's like in a movie, and it's like, oh my gosh,
it's like a jail cell closing.
Yeah, like now what do? I don't have anybody to ask for the 40th time how to wrap my child like a burrito. Yeah. Like it's scary. Like I don't know what I'm doing. Why do I have a child? I enjoy practicing, but why do I have a child? And why is this my responsibility? And
right.
And then going to the grocery store and seeing a parent handle their, we're so quick to judge one way, but we don't realize how quickly we judge the other way too, which is when I see a parent actually handle their kid really well, I go, man, it's imposter syndrome. Clearly I haven't read enough books, or I haven't, I'm not doing it well. I'm a failure as a parent because, and then I go into another store and I'm like, look at those parent, look at that kid freaking out and that parent doing nothing, and it's like, meanwhile, 2 days later, that same exact thing happens to me.
Yeah. Well, and it's that, it brings two things. Like, and one of the things I've made a commitment to do is I talk to all women who are going in to have babies about this, and you remember this. I felt so much shame. And I can remember the first time I shared it, and another person said, yeah, everybody talks about like that moment where they see their child and they're like, it's amazing. And I remember they put Jenna in my arms and I thought, oh God! Oh! What am I gonna? I need an adult. If I put her down and walk out the room and never come back, would people hate me? Yeah. And it wasn't that I didn't love this human. It's just like it was this terrifying concept that I'm responsible for another human. Yeah. And I have so much of my own personal brokenness, and it all just came on me, and then what do? The nurse comes in and they kind of coach you through it. And you feel like, and I still, I'm obviously way more bonded to my child and my children and my life today than I was in that moment, because that was a moment of just like, oh my gosh, like this is real. Like this is real, like super duper real. but there's still those moments where I look around and I go, I have no clue what I'm doing here.
Yeah.
Like my kids are like losing, like one of them loses it in a store, and I just stand there completely numb because I'm just
What do I do?
what do I do? Which makes me think about this.
They didn't come with a manual.
Right. And they don't, like everybody has this idea that if you read this book and you employ the strategies, I won't get into anything personal, but I will say that I was, so I was going on this girls trip. I'm in the airport with our friend Naomi, and we can hear this, like, just this huge hubbub happening as we're walking into the bathroom. And I literally walk across the threshold of the bathroom, and this, like, sippy cup comes flying by my head. And there's this, like, poor mom, and she's got this other kid. It's like Jenna, it's like Jenna's age, and the kid's like this. And then meanwhile, there's, like, this 2-year-old who's just absolutely in complete meltdown mode, and all this mom's trying to do is just kind of help meet the need, try to help meet the need. And so, it's that moment where I was like, okay, I know this script because we have one of those. And so I had to pee really bad because so I go into the bathroom and I pee and I come out. She's still trying to, like, and some parents would see that, or people would see that as trying to negotiate with the kid. She was trying to soothe him. He wanted water. Then the only water that was coming out of the sink in the bathroom was hot water. And so she was putting it in there because he was refusing to go outside to the water fountain with her because he was a 2-year-old in a complete meltdown mode. He was completely irrational. So she was just trying to soothe him, and he kept getting the water, and it was hot, and he was throwing it. And so I just walk out, and at one point you could just see her face. She was like just so stressed out. And I just said, I have one of those. I have one of those strong-willed children too, and I just want you to know you're not alone, and can I do anything to help you? Yeah. Like, would it be helpful if I walk out? And she's like, he won't, like, I can't separate the sippy cup from him. Yeah. Like, it's like lose-lose. And I said, well, just know you're seen by another mom. She said, thank you so much for saying that. It doesn't change the fact that the kid's melting down. It doesn't change any of this. So we walk outside, and she finally grabs him and just takes him like a football out the door, and she's trying to put him in his stroller, and he is literally like losing it. I mean, screeching, raising Cain, like throwing himself, doing the flatboard thing, and she's trying to get him in the stroller, and she hits her. Like, all of a sudden she
tap
looks
out point.
Well, and she looks around, and she can see everybody giving her the looks, and so she picks him up and just smacks him on his butt and says, "Stop it." It's obviously not how she parents. Yeah. But in that moment of desperation,
felt expected by the group. Yeah.
And then he loses it again, and then you could see the shame fall on her, and I just had this moment where I was like, yeah, that's how we are in life, right? Like that's it. I mean, I related to her so much, and I didn't have an answer for her. And I think that that's part of where people who aren't safe for us can be dangerous with imposter syndrome. Is that finding people who are safe, so when we're in those really hard places, they really honor it and see us. They don't hand it back to us. Does that make sense? Yeah. Because in that moment, I didn't have an answer, and I felt powerless for the mom. And what a lot of people do is the judgment is the idea that if it was different, if they just did this, it would be different. It wouldn't be uncomfortable. Yeah. So. Yeah.
Well, the answer is different for everybody.
Sure.
The real truth is that none of us know what anybody else needs to do. I don't even know what I need to do, so we're trying to figure it out. And the more respectful we can be of other people going through their
That's right.
Whatever struggle they're going through, the better.
Well, that's it with other people, like not just with ourselves, but curious, not critical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I put hobbies, podcasting, like imposter syndrome, like immediately thinking, I've never done this before. I'm going to be judged. I'm willingly putting, speaking into a microphone and saying, opening ourselves up, and that's scary. And I think that, it's that expectation that I should know how to do this of myself.
Sure.
And realizing that, the only way to get more proficient at something is to do it. And that's a perfect example of how imposter syndrome can block us from experiencing things that we really want to experience.
Sure.
Which is, it's that thing that says, well, I'm not going to do that because I'm too scared to be judged.
Oh, how many times
I need to practice 100 podcasts quietly and not. I remember Scott was like, no, we're posting it. Like, you have to post it. Like, You have to do it and you have to post it. Otherwise, we'll do, hours and hours and hours of content that you never post. And it's a great, audio library for yourself, but nobody ever hears it and you never get comfortable with putting it out. And already we're getting more comfortable with that. But I don't want fear and feeling like an imposter to prevent me from experiencing things, because quite frankly, all of the good things in my life, I didn't know how to engage with those. I didn't know how to be a husband or to be married,
right,
or to be, a parent, or to be a business owner, or to be a therapist, or to be I didn't start out knowing how to do any of that stuff.
Right.
And
I don't even know how to be a Julie.
I'm still figuring that. I definitely don't know how to be a Julie. If any of you know how to be a Julie and can help us out, that'd be great. And then I put down sports. A couple different ideas that I had was how I can remember when I first started working at the hospital, we would do treatment teams, and it was like the expectation was you just talk about sports. Well, pro tip, I don't watch sports. I've never watched sports. I really don't care, but I'm kind of expected as a dude with a beard who works out that I've watched the football games. And so I would watch ESPN to like get a couple names and be like, so what do you think about so-and-so? And I remember how freeing it was to realize like, to open up about that and be like, Dr. So-and-so, like, I don't watch football. And then be like, really? Like, yeah. All right. And it was just that thing of me working through that fear of feeling like I was going to be an imposter dude if I didn't know about.
Sure.
It's like, even now people ask me, did you watch the national championships? Like, nope.
Yeah.
I woke up at 4:00 to work out and looked at the score, and that was it.
Well, and I laugh because sometimes people will be like, they'll be like, what do you think about this? And he's like,
talk to Julie. She cares about that stuff, not me. Well, but being true to ourselves with that, and I'm going to get to that in a second. Like, what is the gift of imposter syndrome? How can we grow through it, and how can we begin to honor being a Julie and being a JP?
Yeah. Well, then the first thing is acknowledging that it happens to everybody.
Yeah.
You have that, right?
Yeah. So what do we do about it, right?
Yeah.
What's the practical application of what do we do with imposter syndrome, and how do we work through it? The first piece is
it's not a syndrome.
Yeah.
It's as simple as being a part of the human experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. And everybody experiences it.
Yeah.
Yep. To some degree. Some more than others.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If any part of you is human.
Absolutely. And there are some people who would even say that narcissists wouldn't experience this, but that's not true, because even a narcissist, it's funny. I read a study a couple of years ago about how major depression is an issue for people with narcissistic tendencies. And why is it? Because they have these moments that highlight for them that the narrative that they have in their head is not what reality is. Yeah. Now, can they withstand it? Can they walk through it? Is their capacity to acknowledge it and internalize it different? Sure. Mm-hmm. But even the person
they're not immune from it.
They're not immune to it. Absolutely.
So the first thing is realize you're not alone. Everyone experiences it at times.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing, affirm yourself of all the hard work, the effort, the experiences that you've had up to this point. Acknowledge that stuff for yourself.
Sure.
It's kind of like with your friends, like as much as in our friendship groups, there's times where we feel like, oh, I'm not a part of. It's like, but these are the people that I've been doing life with for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years.
Right.
Like I wouldn't have had all of those experiences had I not been a part of them.
That's right. It's
not possible. So I need to affirm that, not that I'm the greatest thing in the world, but just the reality of
I'm a contributing member to this interaction.
Yeah.
Well, and part of that is also like affirming, next we talk about supportive people, or we can practice vulnerability. And the truth is that a lot of times when we're starting out and we're working through this, we're talking again about we cling to people and situations and circumstances which may actually amplify the imposter syndrome, right? So the friend that can't show up or can't allow us to be vulnerable or can't get over their own jealousy or the coworker that undermines the work that we do, or the boss that feels intimidated by us and so they undermine the work or they don't allow us to shine. They don't mentor us, they shut us down. And I think we all have had those experiences in life, and so it's through finding people that aren't safe for us. I think that's the other piece is like
that
understanding
we dig in with people
that
who are.
That's it.
Yeah.
And it's a process. I mean, I come back to that every week, but all of this is a process. It's a lifetime process. It's an experiential piece. We've all thrown our energy into the black hole, right? We've all thrown our energy into the black hole, but it's like the danger is the narrative that it's always that way, or we're so worthless that we're not worth digging in and showing up and being seen. And so what I've gotten from this group of friends is I've been friends with all of them through the years, right? It's this particular, this commitment to traveling together. It's almost this piece of glue that's kind of brought us all, like, we want to keep traveling, and we travel well together, and our personalities fit well together. So it's this commitment to developing together and being seen. Like, we have to be seen to grow. And so I have spent years chasing friendships with people who can't show up for me. And so it's also now being in this place where I go, I'm worth showing up and being seen. And we've done this in our marriage, right? Like, we've been married it'll be 11 years next week.
Yep.
Yeah. Next Thursday, right?
Yeah. Whatever the 31st is.
Okay. So maybe that's, next Thursday.
Sure.
So, or is it Friday? One of those days. But anyway, 11 years next week, 13 years together.
Yeah.
And we're really just starting to show up in a new way with each other, in
Every
the last
year.
couple of months. But even we just really have deepened this in the last couple of months, and and we're changing our interactions, and we're doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So, and we're getting what we need from it.
Yeah.
So it's that piece of changing the narrative from this person can't do that to I'm going to do everything I can. I had a friend yesterday say, I just don't care anymore. So I show up and ask for what I need because I just don't care if it hurts their feelings. I was like, no, you care enough more about yourself and having your needs met now than you do being worried about whether they're not going to love you in the way you need, Yeah. And it's a real critical shift.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the last things that I think is really, really important is that not just realizing you're not alone, not just surrounding yourself with other people, not just realizing all the hard work and the experiences that you had leading up to this point, but how can we leverage it and use it as an opportunity for growth as well? Because in general, it normally shines a light, not always, but most of the time, my feeling of being an imposter can shine a light for me on areas of opportunity for growth.
Sure.
Like you talked about in your friendship group, it being an opportunity to lean in, to not isolate, to go on the trips anyway, to reach out anyway. Professionally, I regularly will take a look at the fact that when I feel like an imposter in some area, the truth of the matter is no, I have all of these experiences that have given me the right, the legal ability, the educational ability to be where I'm at. And there's more.
Well, and there's there's this ethical piece for us as clinicians, right? And personal trainers and health coaches that says you
continue to grow.
You continue to grow,
Yeah.
right? You continue to build your competency. And I think that's the piece is and that's a great segue to kind of what we're doing next week, right? Which is this concept that we all have a baseline that we have to come in on.
Yeah.
And for some of us, that's just breathing and showing up.
Breathing. All right.
And showing up.
Let's say this podcast just took a turn.
It's breathing and showing up.
Yeah.
And for some people, we have a little bit more on deck when we come to the table.
Yeah.
But if that's what we have is that we can take a breath and we can show up, then that's a good start. And so what we're talking, it's like this concept is not an overnight matter. It's a lifetime process, just like everything else. And so it's this concept of where this will be a theme that we kind of come back to as we go through everything.
Yeah.
So next week, we're going to dig into step 1, a deep and meaningful understanding of where we want to be.
Where do we want to be?
Yeah. So where do we want to be? And so I think that talking about all these concepts is a preparatory for that so that we're not trying to explain what they are as we dig into these is really crucial.
Yeah. So imposter syndrome can help us shine a light on where we want to be.
Sure. Yeah. And, and then the biggest thing is, again, making that commitment to show up in spite of it.
Yeah. Anyway.
To ask for help with how to use the equipment, to ask for help how to tweak our nutrition. I think I said, the shift, I think I talked about it in the Oh, I did it in one of our weekly content pieces where I talk about the shift between like I've always given up on this, and so I'm lazy.
Yeah.
And so it's that shift from that to so I have all of these experiences I can pull
I've
from.
got a ton
and
of experience to pull from.
Yeah, and now I just need some help tying it all together.
Yeah.
And following through with it. Yeah.
So that's next week.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So I just want to say, like, my thanks to you is just continuing to show up with me.
Yeah.
I love you.
You're welcome. I love you too.
You know, I know that's awkward on the podcast, but it's just like this is our opportunity to get up and show, you know, this is an expression of us showing up together.
It's 1 hour that we get to spend.
That's right.
With each other.
And we get to share it with the whole world.
Well, there's not that many people listening.
But it's out there for anybody who does.
Yep.
So
yeah. Well, you're welcome. And thank you for showing up with me. Yeah. Cool. So next week we're going to talk about where do we want to be?
Yeah.
How do we build a better understanding and a vision?
Yep.
And goals around where do we want to go and
That's
how
right.
do we track towards that? Thank you all very much. You can follow us at colewellness.com and at all social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube. Check out the blog.
Yeah.
Julie writes cool words, puts them together nicely in ways that are understandable.
Yeah, and I'm doing a blog right now around this content, but I may expand it so we have some extra content too.
Cool.
Yeah, that would, I have to give some thought to that. Another final shout out to Scott, Scott Fowler
Whoop, whoop.
Media.
Crushing it.
That's right.
Yep.
So got to remember to go in and tag him this week so y'all can see his content on the Book of Face.
Yep.
And
he's doing some really cool stuff. We're grateful.
That's right.
Yep.
Absolutely. He's also on LinkedIn. He's got a really cool headshot on LinkedIn. So,
all right.
yeah. So thank you for everything you do, Scott. Yeah.
That's the end of episode 3.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Bye.